What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rams Brothers. I'm your host, Dean, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother and the other great host of this show, Nick. And Nick, Jalen Ramsey is no longer a Ram. We've been talking about it for 3 weeks, but the news broke yesterday. What was your initial reaction? But first and most importantly, how are you?
I'm good. That was the most, hey guys, welcome back to a reprehensive introduction of Rams Brothers that we've ever heard, even after a Super Bowl loss. But I feel fine. I'm good. This makes a lot of sense. I like the writing's been on the wall. We've talked about it for like 3 weeks now. So, I'm totally just at the part of I'm at stage 5 of the grieving process, acceptance,
Sure.
So just moving forward, and I'm good. I'm good. I'm doing good. I'm just thinking about this team next year, and if they could even be a contender. And then I saw that the Niners got Sam Darnold, and I was like, oh no, we can still compete.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll be able to compete, but I'm not overly optimistic about this upcoming season being one where we're going to compete for a playoff spot and potentially be a playoff team. And yes, I'm representing my Jalen Ramsey jersey. It is, it's a dark day for a lot of Rams fans, but I think contractually it makes sense to be able to move on from him in a year where you're trying to move on from all of the dead money potentially and everybody outside of Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, and Matthew Stafford, and he was the first player to be within that conversation, and it was a long 3 weeks coming, right? Like he was tweeting about how it's been being worked on. Miami was a dream destination, and the Rams owed him a ton of guaranteed money on March 19th, right? So they kind of openly refused to pay any more money on that specific contract. And that contract, Nick, hasn't been touched since the 2020 season, right? So it was a period of time where you brought him in, you restructured his deal in 2020 after you brought him in 2019. And then you have to be able to move on from a player, whether it's something that you're excited about or not, and cut your losses and be able to kind of figure out and carve out the next window. And I think if Jalen Ramsey were able to stay here and play on the back half of that contract with absolutely no guaranteed money, for the player of his caliber just doesn't necessarily make any sense. So I think when you kind of dig into it a little bit, maybe we were in denial. I certainly was for a certain period of time, thinking you could just restructure him and kick some more money down the road. But then understanding the Rams' full philosophy for years to come, I think it entirely makes sense that they decided to move on from him, because it was really anybody that wasn't Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, or Matthew Stafford. And Donald and Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald essentially earned a lifetime deal to play with the Los Angeles Rams. And Cooper Kupp, if you listen to Jordan's podcast earlier today, said that he may be buried in the building when it's all said and done. So I think those are the two guys you can kind of hang your hats on. You could expect them to be the face of the Rams' franchise over the next 3-4 years. Hopefully neither of them retire. Aaron Donald doesn't retire. But I think a lot of what happened with Jalen Ramsey and the Rams' situation holistically for the next couple of years, a lot has to do with Sean McVay. Right, because McVay was the guy who was the glue to hold everything together in terms of the core. Otherwise, the entire thing would have just exploded. Right after the Super Bowl, there were conversations that were happening within the building where there were some staff members believed that not necessarily the entire organization from top to bottom in terms of coaches, but players, the roster would be completely shooken up. And I think that's understandable considering the amount of resources they invested to be able to climb to the mountaintop and then win a Super Bowl in their home stadium. So I don't want to kind of beat on a dead drum. We've been talking about the Jalen Ramsey situation for at least 3 weeks at this point. But I think the Rams' philosophy moving forward is one that a lot of Rams fans have to adapt and kind of get behind, because it is the future of what's happening right now.
Yeah, I think we saw a lot of decisions happen before our eyes in this sense, because last year it was McVay dealing with the potential of what could have been if he retired and just left. And then he was like, well, when Ramsey, Stafford, Kupp, and Donald leave, that's when I'll get out of here, which then made it seem like he was pushing some people out the door and he was leaving out the door like immediately. But then now we're at a completely different tune where McVay is like, it's not going to be a story every year of whether or not I'm leaving or not. I'm here. I'm committed to this. This is where I want to be. This is the organization I want to be with. And what that means is having a little less loyalty to that core, those pillars, and having like the strong-armed, kind of coach / GM ability that he has, him and Snead have, where when they see somebody that they can get stuff back from, and they were potentially paying them too much, so they can open the cap for the future, they're going to move on. And make no mistake, I think it's Ramsey right now. It could be Stafford next year. Or, I mean, like, I know you just said, Cup, I'm going to get buried in this building, and I'm sure he'll retire a Ram. But if there's a situation where he gets injured at some point next year and another team is talking about bringing him on, I don't see anybody.
Sure, no, yeah, totally get
I
it.
don't think anybody's safe anymore.
Yeah,
That's what I'm taking from this Ramsey trade.
Yeah, one of our close friends, Johnny, who we both obviously know very well, sent me a message on Instagram and said, would you trade right now Cooper Kupp for 2 first-round picks? And the way that the organization is going, yeah, the answer is yes, because he's not one of those members. He's not one of those players that in 4 or 5 years, he's going to be able to perform at the same level he's going to be able to perform at right now. And if you're trying to maximize the volume and capital you're getting back over the next 3 or 4 years, it wouldn't make sense theoretically to get 2 first-round picks back for a player of Aaron Donald or Cooper Kupp's caliber. But I mean, the contracts are egregious. So it's also, you have to consider them, another team trading for both of those players, one of those players, and then having to take on the actual contract, right? Which is, a lot of teams aren't structured to be able to take on a contract of Aaron Donald's caliber. So somebody like Cooper Kupp or Aaron Donald being traded is not something that I think the Rams are going to be willing to discuss right now. They're not fielding calls for either of those players. They talked about Matthew Stafford recently fielding calls for him, and Les Snead alluded to this in his interview, was, if we're going to take calls, it's definitely something we're going to listen to. We're not necessarily outreaching to try and get rid of Matthew Stafford and trying to offload his contract. But if there's somebody desperate in the league right now that's looking to fill the quarterback position and is willing to offer something desperate, like 2 first-round picks, like which would be offered for, like, theoretically for Cooper Kupp or Aaron Donald, it's definitely a deal you have to consider making, right? And then the next couple of years, you evaluate the quarterback classes, and then you see if you could bring in a veteran or potentially bring in a rookie that can keep you sustainable for the next 3 or 4 years, which is probably not a situation that they want to be in. And I think that, Sean McVay kind of coming back at least signaled to the league that Donald, Kupp, and Matthew Stafford were all going to kind of be within this core. And if he didn't come back, Nick, it would have been $100 million in dead money that they would have had to eat. So it really would have blown the whole organization up. And then you could legitimately be talking about the core being poked at and one of those weight-bearing walls actually coming down. So that was, that's the other side of the coin, is that's how close it was to the full organization just imploding from top to bottom after the Super Bowl win. So, I think one thing that Rams fans really kind of have to hang their hat on is the fact that Sean McVay did want to come back, and he did want to, be able to kind of recoach this team up, everybody from, the bottom 3 down, that needs professional development, that needs, tutoring, needs to spend extra time after practice. Like, that is a whole different monster. But I think that the angle of it, and kind of having to readjust your mental to coming into that every single day versus the massive and steep climb it was to get back to the Super Bowl and then win it again, it's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, and I'm happy they're being honest about the Matthew Stafford situation. A lot of people are desperate right now at the quarterback position. The Jets are probably going to give a huge haul, maybe during this podcast that's going to come out, to bring in Rodgers, and then the Niners just signed Darnold, like I said, and then the Raiders got Jimmy G. So it's none of those guys really are at the caliber of Stafford. Rodgers, I would say, is the closest and probably a little better. But also old and aging. So
yeah, 5 years older than Stafford.
Honestly, the only team, and this will never happen, that has the best case for him, San Francisco.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the Detroit Lions. Not anymore.
No,
I don't think San Francisco.
I think if you put Stafford on San Francisco right now, they're NFC Championship winner.
But their option, their chance, and we talked about this, to get the first overall best player, the top quarterback, that is 2 first-round picks. what it took to trade to get down, to get up to draft Jared Goff first overall, what it took to bring Matthew Stafford into the building, all the while still having Jared Goff as a piece. Like there's a lot at play there. Like if you're going to go ahead and trade another haul, that 49ers gave up 2 first-round picks to get Trey Lance, to move up in the draft and draft him. So that was their investment. You can only do that once every 5 years. Otherwise, you're just going to put yourself in hell. So I think between Trey Lance and Sam Darnold and Brock Purdy, you know the old saying, Nick, you say it. I know you know it.
Yeah.
You have 3 quarterbacks, you have none.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say. I was going to say, I've never heard that before today, so I don't really know if it's an old saying.
It's true.
Sure. I made a bold claim that Trey Lance wasn't going to start as a 49ers quarterback after last year. Like going into last year, and people were like, you're nuts. They traded up to get this guy. I was like, I've seen him. I've seen the tape. He's not ready, and he doesn't really have what it takes. And he got injured, but still, They have zero faith in him.
Yeah, jury's
like,
still
none.
out. Jury's still out on him.
So
I understand why some people don't have faith in him. I entirely agree with that, and I think there's a reason. There's plenty of reasons not to. I mean, like you could look at him pre-draft. You look at everything they evaluated, his overall skill set, his experience in college. It's not somebody that you're just going to plug in first overall pick or a top pick, and he's going to be somebody that's going to progress you to the top of the conference. And it has yet to happen. So the jury is still out on that situation between Purdy and Sam Darnold. I don't think there's any excitement there. But then going back to what you even got in return for Jalen Ramsey, because I think that was the other side of the coin that I think a lot of Rams fans were awfully upset with. And I think that you have to kind of understand that the deal, the contract is what the Rams were offloading. That was a big piece of the trade, right? It's 40% in the trade.
You can know that and also be upset at what we got in return. Because it's pitiful, honestly. And even though we're unloading the contract and we are being nice to Ramsey and where he wants to go, which was Miami, like as a Rams fan, it's still annoying. That
he wanted to go to Miami, though, but there were reportedly other NFC teams that were interested in him, and there wasn't a huge difference in what was offered. So you don't want to trade him in the NFC. You don't want to trade him in conference. So what are you going to get, a couple of picks up? You get the 68th pick versus the 77th pick. You got a pick and a player, and you offloaded the contract. And the player is Hunter Long, Nick. Not a lot of Rams fans are familiar with Hunter Long, understandably so. Nick, did you know who he was before he was moved over to the Rams? Because
no,
I didn't. I certainly didn't. And I don't think a lot of Rams fans had the reason to.
Did you?
No, I said I certainly didn't.
Oh, I was like, who are you trying to impress?
No, so
I didn't know who the hell that was.
It's very clearly said didn't. But he's the guy that came along in the Ramsey trade. So it's pick 81, and it's Hunter Long. So the question is, who is this guy? Who the hell is Hunter Long? And I don't think a lot of Rams fans are going to get a ton of excitement. He was the 81st pick, by the way, overall in the draft. The Rams got the 77th pick. So they now have a 2nd and 2 third-round picks. So who's Hunter Long? 3rd-round draft selection, 81st overall from Boston College. He was a really good prospect with tons of upside. He's what the Rams like in terms of short space quickness. He graded very highly in the 20 split and the 10 split in the combine. Almost identical RAS score to Rob Gronkowski. So obviously hasn't done a ton in Minnesota quite yet, but he's only 24 years old. He's 6'5". He's 255 pounds. There's a lot to like about him as a prospect. Not a proven commodity yet, but he's essentially another draft pick that the Rams could add to the 11 players right now that they're looking to onboard in April. He was the most targeted tight end in college football during the 2021 season, even more than Kyle Pitts. I think it would be really funny if Hunter Long turned out to be more of a sure thing as a pro over Kyle Pitts based on the trajectory coming out of the draft and where everybody projected Kyle Pitts to be in terms of all-time great tight ends. But he does have a really unique skill set and unique trait. And one of those unique skill sets and traits is that he was used more like an NFL tight end in Boston College's pro-style offense than a lot of other tight ends are used in college in general, which asked him to block. He was an inline tight end, it's truly a rarity in college football, is the fact that This is a guy who spent time on the offensive line, who understands a more complex pro-style offense, played in Miami, which was an overcomplicated offense, had to become a blocker, had to become somewhat of a pass catcher, although he only had one catch, and I think it was in the postseason this past year. So it's not somebody that you're going to be overly excited about. But if you go back and watch the tape, when the ball's in the air, he can track it down. He makes those contested catches, tough catches, make them look really easy. It includes throws down at his toes, which is really important for tight ends. A trait to be able to have is be able to reach down, catch balls at your toes. And I think that some of the continuity with the coaching staff, as it's kind of all forming together and they're relying on some coaches to potentially outreach and bring in some notable unrestricted free agents or draft picks. Mike LaFleur, Nick Caley, and Ryan Wendell all probably had more familiarity with Long than any Rams fans or any Rams member on the pre-existing staff. They all went against him twice in this past year with the Jets, Pats, and Bills. So all three coaches, tight ends coach, the offensive line coach, and the offensive coordinator, all have some solid familiarity with a player that a lot of Rams fans don't even know who it is yet. So that's a good sign. The fact that he was essentially playing in Nick Caley's backyard when he was in Boston College, probably went to a few Boston College games there when Long was there, as he was with the Patriots for 4 or 5 years. And the Pats actually had a third-round selection in the 2021 draft, but it was removed as a punishment for illegally filming of the field and sidelines by the team's television crew of a 2019 game between Cincinnati and Cleveland, if you remember back to 2019 when that happened. They originally had pick number 77, which is the pick that the Rams got back for Jalen Ramsey. And who knows, maybe they would have went out and drafted a tight end. Maybe this is a guy that Nick Caley considered someone that was highly covetable to bring in. And, the Patriots haven't had a ton of tight end success since Rob Gronkowski left. And they've been looking to kind of duplicate the success that they've had over the past 10 years or so. So Nick Caley is potentially one of those guys. He's only 24 years old. Travis Kelce, as an example, and I'm not comparing the two directly, was a special teams player for the first year of his career, right? First special teams player under Andy Reid, and that in the Kansas City Chiefs, as they were kind of making that climb to the top, still had Alex Smith as their starting quarterback. So whether you have faith or not in the move, I think this is a regime with Les Snead and Sean McVay and Tony Pastors and Kevin Demoff that you have to kind of sit back and trust. It kind of is a little bit of a trust the process situation. I know that's something that would anger a lot of fans. You have to be patient. There were like 57 NFL transactions today, and the Rams didn't make a single move. So, that has to kind of, you're erring on the side of caution. You're pumping the brakes, but that has to make a little Rams fans uneasy, considering how used to the fun breaking news they've been over the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. The whole thing with this kid, it just, two things come to mind, right? Number one, Tyler Higbee. Probably like if they truly have faith in this guy and they think that like this is somebody that they would have drafted like equal talent, not just thrown in to the deal. You expect less Higbee on the field, except maybe maybe expect zero Higbee. Could get to that point where he's just no longer on the team. And then you brought up the familiarity that Miami, the Jets, the Patriots have with this guy.
Yep.
But how much? One catch? You know what I mean? In the postseason,
all of them were involved in the draft process, right? They probably all evaluated him as talent. They watched him as a blocker in that offense. Maybe it wasn't a condensed set. Maybe working with in practice. They had conjoined practices. They noticed that he was a talented pass catcher. Maybe there was a defensive lineman that went up to one of the coaches and said, "Man, this guy's a hell of a blocker. I can't get by him." Like there's all these kind of things to take into consideration.
All of that.
I'm not trying to sell you on. I'm not trying to sell you. That's why I said prospect 87 times. I'm not even trying to sell you on the potential of
number 87.
No, I'm just trying to say that the amount of times that I wanted to dig into the fact that he's still a prospect is I'm not trying to tell you that he's any percentage as good as Jalen Ramsey or even Tyler Higbee at this point. But I think that the math has started to math, if you catch my drift, meaning that Tyler Higbee, could have seen his last day as a Los Angeles Ram. He's an unrestricted free agent after this season, and it's an easy $4 million savings if you get him off your books this year.
I
go Hunter Long,
think for sure,
and a draft pick.
That's why this wasn't like, I think this rubbed fans the wrong way in two ways, because not only are you losing Ramsey, but if you kind of dig deep into it, you feel like you're losing Higbee too. And it's not this guy's fault. He's kind of like the scapegoat to the situation because he's what you're getting in return. I like that you're saying that he kind of is just like somebody that they drafted at this point, and hopefully there's a lot of talk in the building that he can actually bring in, like great blocking and these like by the feet catches and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just right now it's hard to see that, see the big picture, just because of how little hope there is when you lose a player of Ramsey's caliber, which is why I think the fans are kind of.
I know, but it's not hope for this year, right? Like,
yeah, no, I know.
It's so hard to swallow. It's like they've been good for the last 7 years. It's not easy to accept the fact that they're not going to be a good team this year. And who's to say that they're not going to be a good team? They're just not going to be competing for a Super Bowl. They may still be a competitive roster. And I think a lot of these guys, these lower tier guys, are going to step up and contribute. And I think, you get rid of somebody like Tyler Higbee, like it's the nature of the business. And if you understand the grand plan, it's not so hard to accept, because we've talked about this in the last 3 or 4 weeks, is where there are going to be players. Our expectations have been set, Nick. Like your expectations were set on Jalen Ramsey the second that video came out, where he posted from a Philadelphia artist with the Allen Iverson tribute. You knew immediately. So I think that, a lot of these things, if you know it's coming, I'm just going to give you guys a heads up. Like the Allen Robinson situation, they told him you can go seek a trade. Maybe, I mean, you're looking at what you just got back for Jalen Ramsey. Maybe a 6th-round pick if you're extremely lucky. Maybe you get a
for
7th-round
Robinson.
pick.
You may not even get that.
I mean, you might not. Yeah. I mean,
For the contract. I mean, that would be entirely getting rid of the contract.
Well, that's the point, right? And that's the point. You got to get the contract entirely off your books. It's going to save $6.8 million. Right now, the Rams are currently $3 million over the cap. The draft class is going to cost them upwards of $7 million. So ideally, before March 15th, which is in a day and a half, you have to get under by at least $10 million. So $7 million from the rookie class, and then 3 from just being over the cap in general. So Robinson would save you 6.8. So you're 70% on your way there. Hey, Robinson right now is 8% of the salary cap. Like, that's absolutely a move. And I think the free agent class right now, Odell Beckham Jr., Jacoby Myers, Juju, Adam Thielen, DJ Clark, and Alan Lazard, they're at the top of the 2023 agent class. So there's hope. There's definitely hope that you could get some
and then
compensation back home.
To speak on like the I don't know if we're going to win a Super Bowl this year. I think what fans want and what will be pitched to us will be playoffs. Like, get to the playoffs. Anything could happen once you're in the playoffs, which is true. Like, we've seen wild card teams make incredible runs. So while we can say it, we are rebuilding and retooling or whatever you want to call it, I still think there will be a desire in this building, in SoFi, wherever, to be a team that is competing. I don't think they're going to, like, after last year, unless they realize halfway through, like, okay, we're in a position where we could potentially get one of the top 3 picks, then they could just completely falter and go get a quarterback next year or something. But
yeah, I think until like week 8 next year, I don't want to talk about any like tank for Caleb nonsense, right? Because it's like, if you're going to go against, or if you're going to go with what you're saying right now, Nick, is they're going to try to compete for a playoff spot at the very least. They're going to try to be competitive. That puts you out of contention for somebody like that.
Right. And they are kind of in like this gray area right now, because Stafford, 3 max years left, I would say, like, and that's maybe being generous.
Who knows?
So yeah, like, it is this weird kind of gray area. But then it's also like, well, do you have loyalty to Stafford? Like, do you feel like you need to keep him on the team until he retires? And I think their answer is going to be no.
No, I don't think so.
Like, not at all, honestly. Like, we brought you in. We both did what we wanted to do in our football careers, but we're not tied to you to watch you play off into the sunset, especially if you're not, giving us what we need to be a playoff team.
I think they made it egregiously clear is that the only players that they want to see right off into the sunset in a Los Angeles Rams jersey is Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. And even like, honestly, to me, it feels solely like Aaron Donald.
Yeah, maybe. And maybe it will be. Or maybe it'll just be Cooper Kupp. It's going to be one of those two, hopefully both.
Hopefully both.
And I mean, like, you could go back to somebody like Johnny Hekker, who you were positive was going to be a lifer as a Ram. Ended up kind of reviving his career in Carolina, got a couple of more years out of his playing career. Like, that was probably the closest thing you could come to somebody that was interconnected with the franchise, that was connected with the fans, that was representative of the brand consistently, that was a good representation of the brand, that was a consistent all-pro. Like, I think you had some solid credibility when it comes to, like, homegrown players and having people represent your organization well. Johnny Hekker was one of those guys. And like, once you got rid of Jared Goff and Todd Gurley and Brandon Cooks and some of those other core players in 18, 19, and 20, I think it was pretty clear was, we're going to try to build out the next core. And anybody that falls without that cycle is going to be potentially on the chopping block. And then in years to come after that, if it doesn't work, then even those guys are going to be considered to be ones that could be on the chopping block. So kind of is a continuous cycle. And it really means that nobody's safe. I mean, nobody is safe outside of those top two guys. That's why I went ahead and over the past couple of weeks, I was looking through, who's going to help you get under the cap? Who's going to save you the money? The Allen Robinson trade, like I said, will get you 70% of the way there. Tyler Higbee, cutting him saves you $4 million. There you go. Right now, you're $1 million under the salary cap. Even with
the draft. And we've said it so many times, but Higbee's done, especially when you look at it that way.
Yeah. I mean, those are two really easy moves because everybody else if you look under Jordan Fuller, so Jordan Fuller is 1.24% of your salary cap. Everybody else below him is 1% of the less than 1% of the salary cap. I think those are guys that are all safe to return in 2023, like Rob Havenstein. 4.3% of your salary cap signed through 2025. He's not an option. They already restructured him. That's essentially what you would consider. I don't know if you call it a bad contract because he's a healthy, sustainable player that has been within the organization since St. Louis. So maybe that's one that's an exception. Like Cam Akers is not a player that I would consider to be on the chopping block. Like he's in his last year. If he doesn't perform 8, 9, 10 weeks into the season, you might see them do the same thing they did with Darrell Henderson and cut his losses and try to have another career with a different team.
He's somebody that, like, come week 8, if they're in a position to, like, they have like 4 wins by week 8, he'll probably get traded or cut at that point.
I would think so. Yeah,
because then it's like
he's coming back and re-signing with the Rams after this season.
I mean, unless there's like they come out super hot. You know what I mean? And they somehow like win 6 in a row to start the year. Cannot wait for the schedule. When does that come out?
I think I want to say May after the draft. They do like a special event. It's like late May, early June, something like that.
Yeah.
I could be totally wrong.
But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Strength of schedule and all that, up in the air. So
I mean, I'm just trying to set expectations properly, right? Because you talked about how it's upsetting to lose some of these guys and these fans. Like it is kind of like you're blowing it up entirely, but you're just trying to look at everything that's below the core within contracts. You're trying to get all the dead money off of your books in 2023 and then try to rebuild it out for 2024 and 2025, which makes Tyler Higbee, Allen Robinson, Joe Noteboom's a candidate to be restructured. I think that's what you would consider an god-awful contract. Brian Allen, if you cut him, it saves you $2 million. So I think those are the 4 to keep your eyes on. Keep your eyes on Allen Robinson, Tyler Higbee, Joe Noteboom, and Brian Allen, because I think the rest of the roster is what you would consider in Rams land safe for now.
Yeah. And then let me just say this because you kind of brought it up. I want to bring my mic closer for this one. I do not believe the Rams seriously considering OBJ and Robert Woods.
Nope. I think they considered Robert Woods for all of 5 minutes, and then he signed a 2-year deal with Houston.
Yeah, I mean, even so, it was cool that one of the reporters asked about it, but I mean, they don't have the money. They're not in the position to bring him in to, complement Kupp right now. He's too much. And I think he's going to want to be like, that's somebody where history shows if he's not winning, he's upset. So sign him to Dallas. I mean, he makes a lot of sense going to Dallas next year. I think that would be really cool. But yeah, unfortunately, I have zero hopes for OBJ coming back now.
Yeah, I think Dallas makes a ton of sense. I mean, I saw that earlier today that they were legitimately pursuing him late in the year last year. They were going to try to bring him in. I think it was late December, early January, whenever it was that he was going to potentially come back for a playoff push. That to me makes sense. The Rams are out on all top tier unrestricted free agents. Today was the first day of legal tampering. The Rams went in on nobody. 59, 60 moves. Rams made 0. So to me, that feels like everybody that passes that first wave of free agency, everybody that falls within the third tier, the fourth tier, guys that might not be looking like they're going to pick up another contract, guys that can sign for the league minimum, guys you can bring on to your practice squad, like all players that are names that you probably might not recognize, guys that fell late in the draft, guys that weren't given that second contract coming off of their rookie year. That's or guys that, and this is probably something that the Rams will be looking at more for 24 and 25, are guys that are on the back nine of their careers, guys that you feel like could help you for a 2-3 year window. But even that category of player doesn't feel like it fits the criteria for the Rams this year. So that's kind of, you're not going to go and find a rental for 2 or 3 years, hoping that, they're going to be there for the next Super Bowl window. You're going to want to try and do everything for as cheap as possible for this year, and then maybe try to go top heavy again with your salary cap next couple of years to then increase the likelihood to open up the next window. I don't know. I think what they're saying is they're going to be much more balanced. I think they're going to pump the brakes the way that the contracts are structured. They're not going to have Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, and Jalen Ramsey eating up 80% of your salary cap and then leaving the remainder 20% for the next 57 guys on your roster.
Right. So. And like, make no mistake, there's a possibility they go in there, they smoke the draft, they bring in like a cheap running back to complement Cam Akers, and they can be a legitimate football team. I truly believe that.
Absolutely can. Yeah. I mean, the offensive line stays healthy. You talked about Cooper Kupp compliments. Van Jefferson, Benny Skoranek, and Tutu Atwell and Brandon Powell it's not the worst set of compliments you could possibly think of, is it?
No, I guess not.
I mean, you look across the league. Trying to think
every single one of those guys, though, should not be a wide receiver too on a Super Bowl team.
No, of course. And I think what Les was just recently talking about was the way that they're kind of going about the approach with Aaron Donald. Is he's an A+ player? Let's try to find a bunch of B, C level guys that can kind of fill out the roles necessary to then compete. Right. Yeah. So
which I agree with right now. And Cooper Kupp is that A+, and then honestly, unfortunately, I think all those guys are C's. So.
Sure. Well, Van Jefferson could be a B level player.
Yeah, given the right situation.
Yeah, Tutu could be your burner. Maybe he takes a big leap in year 3. Van Jefferson's on a contract year, so he's going to be likely trying to earn the next opportunity to go play as a wide receiver 2 in a different city.
Right.
Yeah, Brandon Powell's coming off of a 1-year deal. I don't know if they're going to re-sign him. We know what Benny Skoranek is.
I would love like a cheap Thielen, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I know you're big on that. No, I'm serious. I mean, unless Adam Thielen goes unsigned for the next 6 days and people are wondering if he's going to retire or he's even going to come back and play professional football, you maybe give him a 1-year deal if he wants to continue playing in Los Angeles. But he's from Minnesota.
I think a lot of people, or like a lot of teams, have that thought where it's like, we are going to lowball this guy for sure.
Why not? I just don't think that any of that fits the criteria of what they're looking to do this year. So I would consider him to be out.
Yeah.
I'd consider any of the top tier running backs to be out. They're obviously Jacobs and Saquon Barkley were at the top of that conversation. Then below him, they were both signed. Miles Sanders, Kareem Hunt.
Jacobs was signed?
Jacobs was franchise tagged. Yeah.
That team is
bad.
The Raiders are maybe the worst run organization.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Like top 3 horribly run teams.
Them in Dallas, I think, need an ownership change because the owner thinks he's a general manager, and he's not. He's not a general manager at all.
Yeah, but Dallas is consistent at least. That like last 3 years, they've had like 12 wins.
Yeah, consistently not good enough to get over the top. Couldn't imagine what it's like to be a fan of the Dallas Cowboys right now. I would have really liked Jalen Ramsey in Dallas, see him aside of Trayvon Diggs. You would have went Ramsey and Beckham in Dallas. I think I would be excited as a
They
Dallas.
definitely don't have the money for that.
Yeah, I guess they don't. Yeah, because they're too busy. It's
Paying their running backs.
10%. 10% of their salary cap is damn running backs. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I think with 11 draft picks, Nick, in 2023, we talked about the approach moving forward.
Potentially 12 if the Bucs are serious about signing Baker Mayfield.
Well, we won't get that pick till next year.
Damn it.
Yeah, we wouldn't get, and we're maxed out on comp picks. We've already gotten 4. So I would think that the only other pick that we could potentially get is from an Allen Robinson trade. So I'm thinking you might add another 6th or 7th round pick. So you get 12 draft picks. It's going to be
That's the guy that doesn't make it past HBO Max.
What's that?
Hard Knocks.
Oh,
a 6th round pick.
Tough. Yeah. What are you going to do though? I'll take 12 draft picks. I will, and 3 top 100 picks. And I think they're going to probably end up trading back and trying to stockpile as many draft picks as you possibly can get. You have 14 draft picks. That's 14 new faces coming into the building. Everybody from last year, I think they had 8 draft picks last year. So you bring as many players into the building as you can. You take as many shots as you can. But like trying to evaluate, who are they prioritizing? Is it an edge rusher? Is it a defensive back? Is it a tight end? Probably not. Is it a left tackle? They felt like they have some sustainability within the building on the offensive line. If everybody can stay healthy, I don't know if that's true. You're going to go back a quarterback at some point. I think until they have their pre-draft meetings, like the Rams don't show up at the combine, but they're at the Senior Bowl. They watch the tape. So like, I think trying to understand, comparing RAS scores to their GPS data, to the tape, to the pre-draft meetings, and then how they act in person, and all those other intangibles that you're trying to find in future draft picks are all remaining to be seen. We'll do some mock drafts coming up. I think, Nick, you and I can do our top 5 players. Maybe we'll do our Dean and Nick's big board for the Rams to keep an eye on. Maybe we'll do a ongoing list of 10 players that could change literally at any moment. Maybe we'll give fans the access to the link. Who knows? Maybe that'll be fun.
Yeah, I like that idea. Let me just ask you something before we sign off, because I feel like you're going that way.
Sure.
So maybe pull up this list, because I don't have it in front of me, but I kind of know who's in my brain. So with all these picks the Rams have, would you be upset to see them, halfway through pick up a quarterback, or would you rather go into the free agent quarterback situation and scoop up a Carson Wentz type player, as like a actual backup? Because if they come in this year with Wolford or Perkins, I just think that's admitting defeat with somebody.
Yeah, I don't think they tendered Wolford. I don't know what the deal is with Bryce Perkins' contract, but yeah, they need to sign some kind of veteran. Carson Wentz wouldn't be at the top of my list, but I would love to see them draft a rookie. I would love to see Sean McVay develop the first quarterback outside of Jared Goff, which wasn't even his draft pick. Sean McVay, has he ever drafted a quarterback?
I don't think so.
Have they ever drafted? Right. If you can get somebody, there's a kid from BYU that reminds me of Dak Prescott. Maybe you bring in like a Stenson Bennett in the 5th round or something ridiculous. Somebody that Sean McVay can kind of coddle, take under his wing, and you feel like you can win some games with. Maybe the next Mr. Irrelevant is in this Rams draft. Maybe the next Brock Purdy from Iowa State is going to be on the Rams' roster. So yeah, I'd go that method, I think, over a veteran, considering what a veteran will cost you, what a rookie 6th-rounder quarterback will cost you, and then having the ability to then kind of develop him, spend time with him. You got a fresh start with an offensive coordinator, with a rejuvenated Sean McVay. I think we're all kind of waiting to see what a quarterback developed under Sean McVay would look like. So I'm very much in that camp.
To me, it's not so much what the veteran costs.
Mm-hmm.
It's the probability of Stafford going down and somebody, we'll see what the offensive line looks like.
Yeah.
But having somebody that can legitimately come in and win you games.
Yeah. If Stafford goes down next year, I'm not even trying to win games.
You know what? Honestly,
if he's down in game 5 or game 6,
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, we got our 1st-round pick. I would like to pick in the top 3 next year if Stafford goes down. I don't need to win a ton of games. I would then like to develop a rookie in that situation. And I know that John Wolford is developed and Bryce Perkins is developed. Like, let's see if we could bring in somebody that has a higher ceiling within the draft.
I would, yeah. That's a really good that's a good answer. Good answer.
Thanks. Anything else before we sign off?
No, I mean, quick thoughts on Darnold on the Niners.
I hate the Niners.
Desperation.
Desperado, looking like a whole bunch of nothing.
Yeah, I think it. I mean,
Sitting
I
in
laughed
a,
when I
sitting
saw
in
that.
old Monte Carlo somewhere in San Francisco, looking for a loss somewhere. I had to tie in the Ray. I think Nick starts cringing when I start quoting stuff.
I just don't think you do it tastefully like me. It's okay.
I have other things. I have other responsibilities in the midst of this podcast.
Don't forget, Bet Online. Live betting, free contests, giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports, whether that's NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, XFL, tennis, boxing, or even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use our promo code BLEAV. Receive your rewards. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Promo code BLEAV right below on your screen. And make sure before you guys go that you know what to do. Like and subscribe, whether it's for Mario Golf in the background, whether it's for the Rams, for Jalen Ramsey, for me and Nick individually. Make sure to spend some time with the podcast. We promise there will be more coming at you guys, more fun to be had. And the offseason is just beginning.
Appreciate you guys listening. Enjoy. We'll be back Thursday right here
on Rams Brothers. Peace. Go Rams.